The rain's kind of annoying sometimes, but we need it. So, you guys hear me okay? No.
Pull closer. There you go.
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for coming out today. My name is Chuck Ulrich. I have the honor of serving as president of this organization, and thank you for that. As you know, this is your organization, so some of the things that I'm going to cover are going to ask you for input, so that you're getting what you need out of this, and we make sure that we're getting what you want. So, first of all, are there any new members here today? Anybody that's in the first meeting? Yep. You want to introduce yourself?
Who's right now?
Oh, okay.
So this is Lorene Erickson, and she's part of Integrity Skills.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Anybody else? First time to meet new members? Okay. So we have an annual conference coming up, December 9th, 2025. So mark your calendars for that. Melissa and the crew will be sharing more information as it develops for that. But from what we've seen so far, it's going to be a pretty good conference. So watch out for that. We have a new vice president. Melissa Olweiser has agreed to become our vice president, replacing Dale. And all the succession planning will work. She'll serve as vice president with me as president for another year, and then I'll come back as ex-president, and she'll take over the presidential role at that point. So when you see her, congratulate her and thank her for her service to the board. She's been with us for a long time, and I think this is going to be a good transition and a good way to grow our organization. So with that change, that opens up the board member position for us. So if you're interested in working with us on the board, I've talked to a couple of people in the audience already, and if you have an interest in it, please let one of us board members know, and we'll give you a little overview of what's all involved, and time commitment, things like that, and see if you're interested. So, with that being said, the NRASP bylaws state to be considered for a board position, you must start with NRASP committee experience. You have a calling to serve in this organization. We have many committees that would love to have you join them. It's a great way to get involved in NRASP. And again, talk to any one of us board members if you're interested in that. So, okay. Golf outing. Roger, you want to say anything about golf?
How many golfers do we have in this room?
4.
Yeah. Literally, it looks like about 4. All right, so for you non-golfers, take this back to your organization. Get your president, your CEO, a salesperson. Get them involved in it as well. You can be a sponsor of the organization and help with some of the programming that we do that we're reaching out and doing extra things for, like incident investigation that we did last fall. That helped to be subsidized through the dollars that we earn through program sponsorships, etc., for the golf outing. If you're somebody that's interested in getting onto the board and you want to be on a committee, I have room on the committee as well. So you can step in. It's a fun outing. The outing is actually July 29th. Registration is turned on our website, so you can go ahead and register that way. The different giving levels for sponsorship also include, some of them include golfers. So gold sponsor, as an example, is a 4-person team as well as included in that price. So food will be served, starts at noon on the 29th. So if you got any questions, please reach out to me. I guess that's basically about all I have. So actually, our first gold sponsor, Brian, if you want to raise your hand, Marsh McGlennon, MMA, signed up already as a gold sponsor, so thank you for that. And anybody else that pops in, we'll try and keep those announcements going.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, monthly meeting registrations. As you know, putting on an event like this, we need to know counts for food and tables and all that good stuff. If you know you're going to be able to attend, please register early so that we can have an accurate count. So we have a seat for you when you get here and you don't have to scramble getting up additional tables or chairs in here and we don't run out of food. Some of the upcoming meetings that we have for the next few months. June will be Crystal Nelson. Topic will be ergonomic lighting, and she's from Fargo Ergonomics. July will be the Fargo Jet Center. There'll be a tour. There'll be more information coming out regarding that. And in August will be Sanford Health, and the topic will be universal waste. On your tables, you'll notice the QR code. If you would, scan that QR code and take the survey. If you forget to do that or don't do that kind of thing, we will send an email out immediately following the meeting. That's how us as a board determine what you want to see from this organization. We just had a suggestion from somebody who walked in earlier today about a topic. So we'll take that back, discuss it as a board, and maybe something comes forward. So we want to give you what you want to hear and what you want to get out of this organization. So please take the time to let us know. If something's up with the food, we need to know that. If something's up with the room, the facility, we need to know that as well. So all that can be done in that survey. So we're on the socials. So if you would, go out and like us, share us, comment, tag us, react to, do all those things that you do on social media, because that helps us grow our footprint out on the internet so that we can get more people to understand what this organization is about, grow our membership, and be able to do even more and better presentations for the other members. As you can see, we do our best to record each of the monthly meetings. If you want to share some of the content with some of your individuals back at the office, you can go onto our website, NRASP.org, and you can share the videos with those folks back at the workplace. So, with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. So, Ron Myrvold is the Director of Field Operations and Safety for Enclave. Topic today will be safety over time. So please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Can everybody hear me okay? Just got to get situated here. So hi, I'm Ron. I am the Director of Field Operations and Safety at Enclave Construction here in Fargo. How's everybody doing?
Good.
All right. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks for that. It's a great group and good luncheon, and I do appreciate being invited to this. Today I'm going to be talking about safety over time. It seems like maybe a little odd programming, but I think once I get into it, you'll understand why I'm talking about that. Besides the fact that I am over 40, so safety over time is something I know a little bit about. So first, just a little bit of background on myself. I grew up on a farm, a small farm in east central Minnesota. It's a 320-acre farm that I grew up on. I know in North Dakota that's pretty small. That's about the amount of land you drive across to get to your real property. In Minnesota, in amongst the trees and stuff, there was a pretty good sized farm that we had there. We had 40 dairy cattle, about 120 head of young stock on the farm. We also had 60 brood sows and about 300 feeder pigs and about 10,000 chickens. So there was plenty to do on the farm, and it was a working farm, and there was 7 of us kids. I had 6 siblings, and we were all kept real busy on the farm. I went to college in the 70s, and I graduated from college. I had a degree, in industrial technology, a Bachelor of Applied Science degree in industrial technology. Specializing in electronics, I actually have an technical engineering degree in electronics. I also have a mathematics degree and then a minor in biology. I paid my way through college by doing construction work. I started a small construction company when I was in college, paid my way through, and I just kind of never quit. So I kept going on with that. And over the years, I've had a lot of different roles, everything from, I'm a carpenter by trade, a craftsman, considered on some of the projects I did as a master craftsman, where I did historical renovations and stuff to match the historical woodworking projects and things like that. I've had a lot of roles, superintendent, senior superintendent, general superintendent, field operations manager, HR director, safety director, vice president of the previous company that I was with, and director positions with Enclave here. So over the years, I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of things that are, tell me that what I've seen in safety over the years, it's something that I'd like to share. I worked on projects from very small remodeling projects up to some very large projects, everything from residential to healthcare. I've been involved with a lot of educational facilities, like I said, healthcare facilities. I was one of the leads on the new Sanford Hospital when it was built. I did the hospital in Thief River Falls for Sanford. Ron McDonald House here in town, CCRI over in Moorhead. Just a lot of projects in the area and a lot of years doing those. So my background is pretty varied, and like I said, just wanted to share that with you so you know where I've come from. So, safety in the 70s. I had a lot of friends when I was going to college, chemistry and engineering fields, and I would talk about getting certified as safety inspectors. And I said to myself, why in the world would you want to do that? Why would you want to be in safety enforcement? In the 70s, this was something that was really new. I think it was 1970 when OSHA was signed into effect. And before that, it was really hit and miss on safety. So, OSHA was just getting established. Getting a degree in safety just seemed like a dead-end career to me. I mean, almost like underwater basket weaving or something when you're going to college. It's like, what are you going to do with that? Pretty much targeted only the large industries, your automotive industries and your industries that were much larger, not the smaller contractors and stuff weren't too involved with this initially. How would anybody take you seriously? If you're going to go into a business it's a big industrial facility and they've been doing this for years. What are you going to be able to go in and tell them about it? And are they even going to listen to you? So it was something that was really kind of out in left field for somebody to go into a safety enforcement field at that time. And like I said, what could you possibly tell them that they would need to change? But obviously it did work and things moved on. Initially, I thought it would be controversial, confrontational, and just a tough field to go into. And for the most part, I think that proves to be correct. Anybody that's in the safety field would have to say that's a tough field to be into. Trying to get people to listen to you and try to get people to change their culture and to learn things is really difficult. So, but looking back on it, the 70s really was a decade where the workplace health and safety exploded. Like I said, OSHA was starting in the 70s and got a little bit of teeth into the programming, fines and that kind of stuff. People stood up and listened a lot more. So the 70s was a real changing point in the safety environment itself. So we know safety efforts have been successful and that worker safety has improved. So one of the questions we ask is, why did the worker safety improve? In the early years, even going back to the 1890s, 1900, 1910s, not that this is a history lesson, but Department of Labor and Industry, I think that started in 1913. Labor unions, worker demands, everybody is demanding that the employers do a better job of providing safety for their workers. So, you know, all these things drove the safety measures that were put into place to improve the working conditions. And, you know, it was also driven by numerous accidents, highlighting the need to prevent the injuries. And eventually, work comp laws, government regulations were strengthened. Employers had to take note, otherwise they had to face the consequences of it. There were strong incentives for this. Once the cost of not improving safety outweighed the cost of improving it, employers had the incentive to change. So when you talk about incentives, employers initially didn't have a lot of incentives to make change. Safety was expensive and accidents were relatively cheap. You know, somebody get hurt, they may or may not have a lawsuit, they may or may not have fines early on. Later years, as OSHA came into play and other regulations came into play, those incentives were much greater. You know, employers had to pay fines and they had to help. You know, they had lawsuits and they had to pay for things when they came along. So the incentives became more and more out front with the employers, and they really came into compliance with that. And it's not just that they don't care about the workers, but it's all business, right? And if it's less expensive to not do it, then they don't do it. And workers have incentives, of course. They don't want to go home injured at the end of the day. They want to have a good work environment. They want to be safe while they're doing that. You know, this is something that you can even look back, you know, and we had incentives on the farm too. We didn't call it a safety program on the farm, but I had 6 siblings, right? We all had to take it on. One thing that comes to mind was some of the old tractors we had. We had an old Fargo tractor and an old case tractor, and they were electric start. Back in that day, that was kind of a luxury that you didn't always have, but they had electric start. But if the battery happened to go dead on that tractor, that's what you did. You went to the front of it, you grabbed the big old crank that's in the front of it, and you cranked it over and you tried to get it started. Well, tractors, especially if they're not tuned properly, they can backfire. And if they backfire and you got a hold of that crank on there, it's going to snap back and break your wrist. And that did happen to one of my brothers, and so we all had to pick up the extra work that he couldn't do for a couple of months. So you look at that, and it was an incentive to make sure that the batteries were charged all the time, and that the tractor was always in tune, because you didn't want somebody getting hurt, so you had to take over the work. So incentives have always been there. And I think the incentives are a big part of why we do what we do. So my question is, does safety need incentive? And I guess I'd have to say the answer to this is yes, it always has been. You really need some type of incentives, whether it's negative or positive, for people to do what they're supposed to do. It's a driving force for both employers and employees to increase and improve their safety efforts. So, you know, we talk about worker training, and I really think, you know, there's the incentives on this, but the worker training that we have to do, I believe, has been a fundamental shift in the industry. So most employers have stepped up and they have a decent safety programs. I don't know of any contractors or employers around that don't have some type of a safety program in place that is pretty robust. Some struggles, but you know, the majority of employers have good programs. But when it comes to the worker training, you know, we do seminars, we do training programs, we do toolbox talks, we do orientations, and so on, and yet we are still responsible for the employee if they do the wrong thing. So, for instance, we provide proper ladders for a particular situation. You know, we give somebody a step ladder, right? Step ladder for the job that they're doing. We've trained them on a step ladder, right? We've trained them 3 times this year for step ladders and for using that. We've done on-site demonstrations. We've done toolbox talks on the sites. We participated in the fall protection stand down here a few weeks ago. That that includes ladder protection, fall protection for that. And then last week we got written up for one of our workers standing on the very top of the ladder. And so the interpretation that comes back is that if he's standing on top of the ladder, he must not have been trained properly. How many have run into that situation? I mean, it's almost like we're giving them all the tools they need, we're training them, we're doing all this stuff, and yet it just doesn't take. So I think that is a fundamental shift in the way safety has been over the years. Our responsibility is not just to provide a safe workplace and to provide the right tools and stuff for the people, but it is also to make sure that they are trained on it. It's like a flip-flop. You know, back in the day, workers and labor unions and trade groups and the public too would insist that an employer does something better to get a safe work environment for everybody. And it was the workers pushing the employers to do this. So the flip-flop that I'm saying is here is it's now the employers trying to force the workers into doing things safely instead of the workers trying to force the employer to do things safely. So it really is a shift. I don't know that it's good or bad. I'm just saying that it is a shift, and it's a shift that I've noticed that has happened over the last few decades. Prior to that, it was always, beat up that employer so that he does a better job of safety for everybody, and now it's really gone the other way. So it changes the approach on how we do safety, and it makes it more challenging. So let's look at some of those challenges. One of the challenges is working in a region that has 4 seasons. We've got 4 seasons here, so we have times of the year when we have certain trade groups that don't work, and so we have to bring in people. So a large number of new workers in the springtime. You've got maybe you've got high school students that are graduating and they're coming into the workforce, or you've got college students that are looking for summer work, or you have workers that have been, they're exceptional workers that have been laid off for the winter. You look at some of our concrete industries and excavators and stuff, the people get laid off during the winter and then they all come back in the spring and they're ready to go. So you have a large number of new workers coming in the spring. It's a really diverse group. Like I said, you've got college students and you've got high school graduates and you've got experienced tradesmen out there, and you've got maybe migrant workers that are coming in for work, and it's just a really mixed bag of people that you have. Full range of experience, everything from people that have been doing this for 40 years to people that have never done it before in their lives. Other barriers that you have age barriers. You've got the young guy out of high school and you got the old guy that's been doing it for 40 years coming back to the job to work. You got language barriers. How many times we go out to job sites and you have people that just don't speak the language, and so those barriers are in there. You also have, work ethic barriers. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of people that have not been trained how to work. The work ethic just isn't there like it is with some other groups, so you're always dealing with that. So there's a lot of experience issues that you have, and a lot of barriers that you have because of those things. And then the distractions, of course, somebody like migrant workers coming in, they're distracted. Where are we going to live, and what do we do, and things at home. College students, they're on a summer break, they're pretty distracted with all the things going on. Distractions always add to the issues of trying to get people trained with safety and trying to make them adhere to the safety rules as you go. So all this adds to the challenge of making a safe workplace. So that comes down to the communication, right? We have to communicate with our people, and we have to communicate in a lot of different ways. So, the question comes down to how do we communicate our safety plans among such diversity when we have so many diverse groups and people and numbers and seasons and stuff that we have to work with. So, well, a little story here. Communication is subject to interpretation. Everybody know what this is? So this is a reciprocating saw, Milwaukee Sawzall. This was the cat's meow back in the 70s when these came out and they started being used on job sites. Reciprocating saw could get into just about anything that you wanted to work on, especially when you got the, I think in the late 70s when they came out with the bimetal blade for them, so you could cut things other than just wood with it. And actually, I got to tell you about this one. This is the 75-year anniversary super sawzall that Milwaukee came out with. It was quite a tool. It was a 10 amp tool. First time they had made a 10 amp tool. The previous ones had been 6 amps, so it had a lot of power. It had a variable speed trigger on it. It went from 0 to 3,200 strokes per minute, where all the other ones were 2-speed or single speed. So this was quite a tool at the time. You see that it's got a chrome housing on here with a rubber protection plate on the front of it. It's got a replaceable cord. If the cord went bad, you could just snap that off and put a new cord on it in seconds. It was innovative in that way. It was quite a tool. And it was the first time that they had ever come out with a black case instead of a red case for the Sawzall. And only on the anniversary series that you get that. So if you have one of these, be pretty proud of it. I'm obviously pretty proud of the one that I got. But I have to tell you a little story about this. So I had a new worker that I had hired when I was doing some remodeling work. We had a 2-story house that we were remodeling, and I had a few carpenters up there, and we were doing demolition up on the 2nd floor. And this new worker, Randy, that I hired, he was up there, and he'd only been on the job a day or two. And I said, Randy, go down to the van and get the Sawzall out for us, okay? And dutifully, he just ran down the stairs and disappeared. 10 minutes go by and he's not back. 15 minutes go by and he's not back. And I got 3 guys out there trying to cut these walls apart. We need the Sawzall to cut those nails off. So finally, I go down to the van and I look at it. It's a tradesman van. Side doors are open, the back doors are open, and every damn saw that I owned was out in the yard. And I said to Randy, what are you doing? He says, I don't know what you need them all out for, but I got the Sawzall out. True story. And so I started to think, in my mind, I have communicated very clearly to Randy. I thought I'd given him good direction. Not considered the idea that he could have misinterpreted or misunderstood what I had told him. I just had no clue that anybody could misunderstand me. Of course, you don't know what you don't know. So then I started thinking, well, who was at fault here? And so I said, well, Randy, how about if I explain to you what every one of these saws are as we put them back into the van? And then it came to the Sawzall, and I said, and this is called the Sawzall. And so then he understood. But so communication is a fickle thing. It takes good communication to train people. So the question comes down, how do we do that? So how do we get people trained? First thing, I think we need to prioritize this. Over the years, I've learned that prioritizing is the first thing that you have to do whenever you want to do any training. You got to take the most important thing, you got to prioritize it, or maybe it's the most recent thing, or if it's the first thing somebody's going to do. So we need to prioritize. One of the things that I found in prioritizing is trying to break that mold between what people have to do when they get to their job. They have to do safety, of course, it's the first thing we want out there, but they also have to get their job done. So how do we prioritize that? So one thing that I've always taken out to the projects is that safety, quality, productivity, in that order every single time. It has to be in that order, and it has to be every single time. An example of this would be, let's say that you have a spill, whether it's on in a retail space or on a construction project or wherever it is. You've got a spill. The first thing that you have to do is you have to teach your people how to go out there and make that safe. You know, barricade the area off, make it safe so nobody can get hurt. That's the first thing you have to do. Then you can go on to showing them or explaining to them, training them how to do the cleanup work on it. That's the quality part of it. So first off, they contain it and they make it safe. Secondly, they do the cleanup and they do that cleanup properly. That's the quality side of it. And then the last thing you do is productivity. And the productivity is how quickly can you get this done? How efficiently can you get this done? But you have to do those three things in order every single time. Safety, quality, productivity. And we know it takes multiple exposures to learn new things. We know that. The research shows that it's 6 to 20 times that you have to be exposed to something before it really sticks. Other researchers say that it's 2 to 7 times. But the one thing that they have in common is that nobody believes that it's once and done. It is always multiple trainings that you have to do on everything that you're teaching people. If you've got kids, of course, you realize that, but that never changes. You know, as people get older, that learning curve is still there. And we know that everybody has a different learning curve. If it's something that you're interested in, you might take to it really quickly. Mathematics, I love mathematics. And my math degree was only because I got an engineering degree. By the time you get an engineering degree, you're this far away from a math degree, so you might as well have it. But I love math, and I couldn't understand why other people couldn't follow it, you know. Simple algebraic equations and things like that. But people learn differently depending on if they're interested in it. If you're not interested in it, you're not going to take, you're not going to learn it very well. So everybody has a different learning curve. Hence, you know, somewhere between 2 and 20 times you have to get exposed to things before you're going to learn them. But we also know that everybody has a different forgetting curve. And again, looking at the research, they say that 50% of everything that you learn, you will forget within a half hour. 75% you'll learn things that you learn and that you're taught, you're going to forget within a day, and 90% of it you're going to forget within a week. And this is what the research says. And again, depending on how interested you are in what you're being taught, that might change. But for the most part, you're going to forget most of what you learned within a couple hours, within a day, certainly within a week. You're going to hold on to about 10% of that. So it's about 10% retainage after a week is all you're going to have. So the story about the guy standing on top of the step ladder after being trained 3 times in toolbox talks and full, you know, the fall protection stand downs and everything else, probably shouldn't be a surprise. It's disappointing, it certainly is. The same issue with things that we have incident reports that we have to do. Anytime somebody gets hurt, you do an incident report, right? And so with Enclave, we have an incident report for subcontractor incidents. We have it for injuries on the job or things like that. And so we distribute these forms to everybody that's in the field. And sure as heck, as soon as an incident happens, I get a phone call, hey, what form do I use for this? Well, let's see, we distributed all these forms and you have all that, but yeah, let me go through it again with you. And so then we decided that's not working so well because every time an incident comes up, we have to explain to them what to do. So we put together a flow chart, and the flow chart says if you have an incident, if it's a subcontractor, here's what you do. If it's an employee, here's what you do. If it's an incident with injury, here's what you do. If it's an incident with property damage, here's what you do. And so we sent that out, a flow chart, and blew it up to 11 by 17 and laminated it, insisted that it gets put up on the wall in every trailer. And then we still had issues with it. So as we pull the people in for our monthly safety trainings and stuff, we would go through it again. And you know, finally I came to the conclusion is we have so few incidents on the projects that the guys might not use these for months and months and months. Some of them don't use them for a year at a time. So by the time they need to use them, they've forgotten everything that they've been trained on here. So finally, I just put that at the bottom of all this training is, if you have an incident, just call me. and that was the simplest thing, because of the time frame and the fact that you don't use it, it's not reinforced, they just don't know it. And that's probably a good thing when it comes to accidents, right? You don't want people to have to use those forms. It's kind of like insurance. The best insurance guy is the one that never has to go out anywhere because he never has any claims. So, kind of like the mechanic repairman, if you remember those commercials. So, all the learning needs to be repeated and reinforced until it becomes second nature, or I would argue that until it's accepted or tolerated, depending on where you are in the cultural change scale. If people want to change, that's great. A lot of times people don't want to change, or they don't want to be bothered with it, but they'll accept it or they'll tolerate it. And sometimes that's the best you're going to get, is getting people to go along with the change, or to tolerate it, or at least learn it, and whether they agree or don't agree with it. I have issues. You go up onto a roof that's a flat roof that's up in the air 3 stories, say, and the roof is the size of a football field. And yet I can't have a guy go out there, a professional construction worker, go out and stand in the middle of that roof without being tied off. I mean, it does seem a little ridiculous, right? That you have to be tied off and you're hundreds of feet from any fall hazard there, but that's what the rules are. So sometimes it is just tolerated. It's not that you've learned it or become second nature or anything else. You've accepted it, you've tolerated it. Sometimes that's the best you're going to get, but most of the time you can get the training out here. Consistency. That's another thing that becomes an issue at times is people getting inconsistent messages. Our company has hard hat, safety glasses, and reflective vest rules. And there are times when our superintendents don't enforce it. We got the cleaning ladies coming in and working up on the 3rd floor, cleaning the windows, washing windows. Why do we have to have them wear hard hats? Okay, well, next thing you know, they walk out of the building to go out to their vehicle to get their lunch, and there's a crane or a forklift operating over the top of that. And you got to stand at the door and say, "Oh, now you got to put it on." Well, the reason that we just say I have to do it all the time is so that we don't have to fight that battle. So you get a lot of pushback on that, and at times superintendents and project managers get tired of playing that policeman role, and so they just don't do it. Okay, that's fine, you don't have to worry hard. Well, then they go to the next job and it's enforced differently, and then people say, well, we didn't have to do that over there. Our concrete supplier and showing up with concrete trucks and having a pump truck there, and the drivers working right underneath the pump truck when you got it running. And he's probably got the most dangerous position of the whole job site. And I sent a couple of concrete trucks home, fully loaded. I called their office and I said, "You remember the talk we had about hard hats, vests, et cetera, et cetera?" "Yeah, well, then you won't be surprised that these 2 trucks are on their way back to your plant." It's not always easy, but it's consistency that you're looking for. Make sure that you're as consistent as you can be, and I know that you'll get a lot of pushback. That's one of the hardest things that I have with our field teams is that consistency. Trying to get people to get that consistent message out there, and that getting everybody to comply with that. So some of the techniques that you can use to help with people to retain some of the knowledge, I guess. One of them that I use, and you'll see it in every group. I see a couple here. People that take notes. You encourage your people to take notes when you're hearing something. If you write it down, you're gonna remember that 7 times longer than if you don't write it down. So it's a good chance, instead of forgetting it in an hour, you won't forget it until dinner time tonight, right? But the technique of writing things down is an important one. So when we have safety meetings and stuff, we do encourage people to write things down. Another thing is to, before you're done with it, is to reflect back on what you've learned, you know, and that might be testing, you know, or asking questions. Hey, you know, we talked about fall protection. What are the 3 biggest things in fall protection? You know, you might ask people in your audience those kind of things when you're doing the training. So the testing part of it does make it a little more memorable for people. And even though it might not be take the place of multiple training sessions, it does help with those, might reduce the number of training sessions that you have to do with that. That's one thing I've learned over the years, is that that it makes a big difference if they're writing it down. And it's funny too, because even when you're interviewing people, they're not normally taking notes, but it's funny, if you interview somebody that is actually writing things down as you're doing the interview with them, you know they're interested, you know they're going to be attentive to things, and they're probably going to retain it a lot longer. And it's like, that's the kind of person that might want, you know. So it's a telltale sign. Another one is applying it immediately. Some of the techniques, if you can apply it immediately, a little story about that. We were doing some bloodborne pathogen training, and I had made sure that we had spill kits on every job site that we had. And so we had, I think I had about 40 people that were going through the training. OECS was doing the training for us, by the way. And we went through the bloodborne pathogens training, and that very afternoon, out on the job site, we had a guy that got cut. It was one of the steel stud guys. He got cut on a steel stud, and he, you know, held his hand and dripped blood all the way from the job building into the job trailer, and there's drops of blood all the way through, and it wasn't terrible, but it bled a lot. And so I'm out on the site, and I said to a field engineer, I said, Tony, we need to do a cleanup out here on this. You just went through bloodborne pathogen training. There's the spill kit. Pull out that spill kit. Make sure that you do it right and get all this stuff cleaned up, because this guy's in no shape to do it. He's bleeding. So he went out and did that. And after that, anytime there was an issue on a job site where we had cleanup to do, Tony was called. He ran out and helped him do the cleanup or taught them how to do it. The guy became an expert in bloodborne pathogen and blood cleanup on a job site, and only because he applied it right away after the training, and he'll never forget that. So it's very impactful if you can get that training applied and put into use right away. You know, if you teach somebody how to use a stepladder and then they go out and use a stepladder, that's going to be impactful to them. If they don't use a stepladder for 3 months, you're probably not going to remember it. So that's another technique that really works. And then, like I said, the consistent reminders, whether it's toolbox talks, whether it's posters that you put up on the job site, you know, things like that. That consistent reminder to people on all of the safety things that you have going on. So those are a few of the techniques that I have found that really work well. So, safe work plans. Written documents that describe how to perform tasks safely and prevent and reduce risk. We do safe work plans for most of the tasks that we do, pre-task planning type of things. So this is a picture of somebody getting hit in the face with a baseball. And when I was growing up, my dad always used to tell us that if you want to learn how to catch a baseball, catch it right in front of your face. That way, if you miss it, you won't miss it next time. And it's very true. So over the years, I have a lot of missed baseballs, so to speak, you know, doing things that you shouldn't do and having to pay the consequences for them. So learning the hard way is very effective. You get hit in the face with that baseball, you're going to learn how to catch that thing next time. You fall off the top of a step ladder, you're going to learn not to stand on top of that step ladder. However, we have to take a little more proactive approach to safety. When it comes down to training, everybody doesn't need to learn the hard way. So as part of our training curriculum, we should take advantage of other experiences, Shared stories, shared wins, shared losses, they're all impactful training tools. Sometimes that meeting after the meeting is just as important as the meeting that you have. You know, you have a safety training meeting, and afterward everybody is mulling around and they're talking about different things, and they're sharing stories. And those stories are pretty impactful. So we encourage that to have people share those stories and talk about them, and even during the meeting, we'll have them get up and talk about, yeah, I remember when such and such a thing happened. And it's impactful, it hits close to home, and people can identify with that. So sharing those stories is a big deal. Safe work plans. They're all about setting expectations. So initial orientation, when you bring people onto a construction site or into a work environment, whether it's a retail space or whatever it is, doing that initial orientation is critical. You have to tell them what the expectations are. Here's where you can park. Here's what the working hours are. Here's the safety protocol. Here's what you can and can't do on the job sites or on work sites. So the initial orientations help to set those expectations. And those expectations have to be set for everybody. One of the things in our industry, safety industry in general, is that it's not just your own employees that you're worried about. It's the public too, and it's people that don't work for you, subcontractors that come in, whether it's a delivery truck driver or if it's a trade partner that comes in to do work. Those orientations have to be done with everybody. When we were doing a lot of healthcare work, you go in and you look at the healthcare work, and when you're working renovated the Roger Maris Cancer Center, the infectious control risks that were there. It's not only your own workers, but it's the doctors and it's the nurses and it's the patient and it's the people that are coming in to visit those people and dropping them off. And you have to take all that stuff into consideration. So the safety becomes very broadband, and it's very site specific, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But those initial orientations help to get that out of the way and to tell people what the expectations are. If you don't tell them what to expect, then you're not going to get what you are expecting. So, site logistics planning. Plan your work, then work your plan. We used to have a poster when I worked downtown a lot that we actually put up on the wall. Plan your work, then work your plan. And it's a big deal. If you don't plan your work, it's not going to come out right. And you need to stick to that plan. If it has to modify, great, but make it a formal modification when you do modify the plan that you put together. Here's how we're going to do this task. Plan it out. Things change, now we're going to do the task this way. That's okay to change it, but you need to plan that work, and then you need to work the plan once you put it out there. Emergency action plan. This is something that we have to do. If you've got more than 15 people in your organization out on a particular location, you have to have an emergency action plan. It's a regulation. So I've seen lots and lots of projects that don't have emergency action plans. But one thing that a few years ago, you guys might remember this. It was on the news. I was doing the Center for Special Surgery on I-94 there, just down from Duluth Trading, and we had an insulating company that was doing the exterior weather barrier. It's a spray applied black weather barrier they spray on, and they're up in a lift where they have hoses that go into a van, a big truck that's got 55-gallon drums of the product that they use to spray on. It's you can do this as a roll apply too, but this is a spray apply that we did on the exterior of the building. And in order to get close to the building, there's a canopy, a drop-off canopy at that surgery center. So they backed under the canopy and they had their hoses out, and the guys were up on the lifts. It was a Friday when they were doing this. And I was the only one on site that day because my superintendent had taken a PTO that day, and a couple of other people had left early, and Fridays afternoons are generally kind of quiet, which is why they wanted to do the weather barrier on this Friday, because nobody's in their way. They don't have all the traffic going Anyhow, long story short, their compressor that they had inside of this trailer that was, creating the pressure for them to spray with their sprayers out there, had a bearing that went out, and the bearing got hot and caught on fire. Of course, they were up in the air and a long ways away from it, and I'm in the job trailer and looking at it. All of a sudden, you can imagine 55-gallon drums of a flammable tar that they're putting on this thing, and it catches on fire. And of course, Enclave's office is right there, and the Enclave's building is full of windows. Within minutes, those windows are full like people looking at an aquarium. But we got everybody evacuated, and we got the fire department called, and within 7 minutes they were on site putting this fire out. But the thing with that is the emergency action plan was put into place. We had practiced it. We knew what we had to do. We had to get people out of the building. We had to have accountability for everybody that was on site. How many people did you have? How many people did you have? We had a muster point, all that stuff. It all went really well. And within 7 minutes, that fire was put out. It was actually one of those learning moments that is a good thing. You can show that what you put in place worked. What really bothers me about this is, what if this would have been one of our multi-family apartment buildings, which is all made out of wood instead of block, steel, and brick? If that would have been this truck backed up to one of those buildings and that would have happened, there's no stopping that fire in one of those apartment buildings. It is all wood. It is a tinderbox that would go up. And when you got a 170 unit apartment building, that scares the heck out of me. So one of the policies we put into place after that was that that kind of equipment cannot be parked close to the building. You've got 150 feet of hose, get over it. You have to walk a little bit, but get away from the building. So emergency action planning is great. We try to do at least one emergency action plan drill per quarter out on the job sites. That's not enough. It should be more, but it is hard to bring everybody together to do that. We also have our subcontractors participate in that when we do it, so that they're all part of it. We find that the more you can get people to participate in these events, the more they're going to buy into them, and quite frankly, their experience will help you do a better job the next time. Site-specific planning, that's another thing. You look at site-specific planning, it's similar to the site logistics planning, but each site is different. Like I was talking about the medical facilities where you have to worry about infectious control, or you have to worry about dust control, or you have to worry about getting neg air machines going and stuff like that, or it might be a site that is a greenfield site where you don't have any of that stuff going on, and you just have to worry about fencing and security. So site-specific planning and the safety that goes along with that is job-specific, and you really need to train on that as you go through. And then the pre-task planning, of course. Every trade that comes in, or every person that comes onto the site, their crew, not only do they do an initial orientation, but they have to go through pre-task planning. Are you prepared to do what you came to this job site to do? Do you have the right equipment to do it? Do you have the right materials to do it? Do you have the right manpower to do it? And what are your safety measures for all this? You're going to come and roof this building. What is your fall protection plan? Are you scaffolding it? Are you working it off of lifts? Are you tying it off to the roof? Or are you just winging it? What are you doing? So the pre-task planning, not only is it a huge quality control item, but it's a huge safety item. So the pre-task planning is something that we have found, and we just put out a whole new pre-task planning requirement for every one of our job sites under the action plans that we do, and it has made a huge difference. Whether people believe it or not, I truly believe that about 75% of your issues will go away if you pre-task plan your work your plan. If you don't do that, I believe that you'll have lots more issues. Almost everything that I see that goes wrong on one of our projects, I can say, did you guys talk about that ahead of time? Did you plan that out ahead of time? How were you planning on doing that? And you'll find out that they didn't. And so if you can eliminate even half of them, what a great resource that would be to do it. So strategies, and not that this is about Enclave, but we do maintain a fairly robust training program throughout the year. I put together matrices that we track this stuff with. Track over 1,800 individual training modules, some in person, some online. Of course, that means you got 60 people that you're training, and each one does 30 training sessions. That's 1,800 individual training modules. So it's not like it's a huge thing, but it is quite a bit to track throughout the year. I started a training catch-up program. I call it T-Cup. That's for people that have missed a training session or were hired after the training session has been held. Most of these training sessions are annual trainings that we do, and you don't want people to have to wait that long before they come around to that next one. And I'm not a big fan of, here's a new employee, let's give them 8 hours of safety training, because as you learn with the training, with the learning curve, it's not going to do any good. You bring them in and you think you've taught them everything that they need to know, and they go out and they're overwhelmed with it, especially if they're not experienced people. So the training catch-up program, steady, slow but steady maybe, but it does help. And then being very specific when somebody's going to be doing something that you know of that is different than they've been trained on, then you sit down and do that additional training. We send out a Monday site staff meeting agenda. Every Monday I send it out to 57 people out in the field that, it's reminders. Here's the things that you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about orientations. You need to be thinking about your toolbox stocks, in addition to your SWIP inspections and your quality control and all the other things. But and it started out when I go to the sites and I started asking our people on the sites questions. I'd say, did you do this? And 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 they're always at some point or other they start glazing over. And so I asked them. I said, "Are you tired of me coming out here and asking 20 questions?" And one of the guys said, "Yeah." He says, "It's just like my wife when I get home." He said, she's going to ask me 20 questions. She's going to keep asking until I have one that I don't answer correctly. So I might as well not answer the first one correctly. And so I said, okay, how about this? I will send you a list of everything I'm going to ask you every week. And if you've got those all done when I get to the site, we can talk about fishing or something. But these things you need to do every week. And it was a big hit. But it also, not only just a list of things that they had to do, are you prepared for your contractor meeting this week? Who's coming to the meetings? Have you done your toolbox talks? Have you done all these different things? There was a list there. But then it started to being kind of an informational thing too, where the first half of the site staff meeting agenda was new things that have come up. What's going on this week? Hey, we're going to get a bunch of rain this week. Make sure that you're doing whatever. We're going to have snow. Make sure that you're clearing your pathways. Or slips, trips, and falls are a big deal this week. Or it's a stand-down week or whatever. So in addition to the half of it that has all of the every week questions that we have on here, it's also kind of a newsletter, if you would, but it's not really. It's just prodding them on things that they need to be looking at. And that's part of that constant reminders that I talked about, where people need the constant reminders so they don't forget things. So that Monday site staff meeting agenda has been a game changer for us. And it goes out every week consistently. And, every once in a while I'll have HR, or I'll have marketing, or I'll have accounting come in and say, hey, Ron, could you let everybody know about this? Make sure they code their car washes to this instead of this, or whatever it happens to be. So it's a chance for us to get that information out in addition to the safety, quality, and productivity things that we talk about. And then we do pre-task planning with all our trades to make sure they're prepared to do what they came to do. Again, it's trying to repeat the consistent message. We want people to be consistent with their message, and we want everybody to look at that pre-task planning, especially the safety part of it, but also the quality and the productivity. How long is it going to take you? And like I said, if you don't tell somebody where to park, and they park in the wrong place, whose fault is that? Going back to the Sawzall story, whose fault is it if you don't explain yourself well? So trying to get that message out to everybody. So some other successful strategies that I have, throughout the years that I have thought have worked, and some of these are the repeat training, combat the learning curve versus the forgetting curve. You want to make sure that you're making impressions. People remember things as they go. Using multiple formats. The in-person training, people get tired of hearing the same person say the same thing week after week or month after month. After a while, they just tune you out. So bringing in different speakers or doing online training is a big deal. It's a change. Daily and weekly reminders, hence the weekly site meeting agenda that I send out. Posters are a big deal. You know, when people go to the bathroom and they got to wait in line at the bathroom, and the advertising agencies have really capitalized on that, right? They have things on the wall, advertising things. Well, when they come to the trailer to talk to the superintendent, sometimes it's a wait because the guy's busy. Or maybe he comes in with 2-3 workers and just the foreman's going to talk to him. The other guys are standing around. Posters up on the job sites and in the trailers is impactful. So put the things that you want up there. They're a captive audience. They got to stand there and wait for their foreman anyhow. So they're gonna read what you have written there. So posters are a big deal, etc. There's a lot of different techniques that can be used, but using multiple formats is a big deal. Mentoring. Possible you pair up a new worker with an experienced person, or at least part of their onboarding. And I learned a long time ago that the best way to really become good at what you know, or really to finalize your knowledge on that, is to teach it to somebody else. If you teach somebody else, you're going to make sure that you know it better than you used to know it because you're teaching somebody else. Anyhow, so the mentoring part is really down to earth. It's one-on-one and it's personal. So at least part of their onboarding. It's hard to do this. I mean, mentoring programs are great, but you can't always do that. You have too many moving parts. But when you can, try to do some mentoring. The onboarding and orientations, that's all about setting expectations, like I talked about earlier. Setting the expectations. If you don't tell people what to expect, they won't know. It includes onboarding new employees and conducting orientations for non-employee workers visiting your site or your place of business. Incentives, I talked a little bit about incentives, negative and positive. Reward behavior, safety luncheon, new review process, swag, recognition, pat on the back, whatever it is, or negative enforcement, discipline, hey guys, I'm really sorry, this is the 5th time I've had to talk to you about that. It's a shame that you're making me fire you right now, or send you home, or send you off the job, or whatever it is. It's not your fault. You don't have to feel bad about it. If they can't, grasp that after a certain number of times, you have to put some discipline into it. And, or maybe it's, now you need to go back and sit in the office and do training for 2 more hours, or whatever it is. You have to have that present as well as positive reinforcement. Pictures and posters, like I say, the pictures say 1,000 words, but also with the language barriers, we find that the pictures help an awful lot. An image of someone falling off the top of a ladder with an X through it, it's pretty hard to not understand that. And then packaging your training to be related topics. I have found that if you can have a flow and a relevance to your training, it really helps. Like for instance, if you're training on scaffolding safety this week, maybe next week you're training on fall protection, and you kind of have a flow to it. I've actually laid out every week's toolbox talks for 52 weeks ahead of time, and the training sessions. This month is this month, and then you look at the whole year training sessions and say, how does this flow? The relevance to it. It's like your, chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3 instead of just another training program. If you're training on trenching and estimation, you follow up with some confined space training. So trying to get a relevance to the flow of your training really helps, when it comes to people trying to remember things, it's not so chopped up in their mind. So, again, just a summary, safety over time. Safety has changed a lot over the years. I believe that the focus has changed from providing safe physical working conditions to training workers to be safe. So, employers are willing to provide safety, are workers willing to learn to be safe? And that's a hard question because, we're always reprimanded when somebody gets hurt on our projects and stuff, but if you've trained them and you've done all of this stuff, what more can you do? And the answer is, you just gotta be consistent and keep doing it, because that is the way it is. And I do believe that is a fundamental change in safety. That safety has gone from workers demanding that they have safe environments to employers demanding that the workers are safe. It's been a big change. Training techniques change over the years, many formats used like we just talked about, the in-person, online, posters, handouts, toolbox talks, SOPs, maybe it's instant messaging. I have one superintendent that does instant messaging to his people on the site. He has everybody on a group text that he sends things out. Hey, the south entrance is icy this morning. Be careful, or whatever it is. So there's things like that. And then most people do not come in with common sense or practical knowledge. At least not in everything. Everybody has a certain amount of common sense and practical knowledge, but maybe not in the field that you're talking about at the time. So most have had little exposure to hazards, and this example is just an example, but farm kids versus growing up in the city. In 1935, there were 6.8 million farms. Today, there's only 1.8 million farms. So less people with exposure to using equipment, tools, ladders, things like that. If you didn't grow up with somebody that does do it yourself or backyard carpenter or welder or whatever it is, you probably haven't been exposed to that. You come out to a job site, this might be the first time you ever climbed a piece of scaffolding, and so you have to train people for that. So as employers, we're tasked with keeping our workers safe, and I just hope that some of these ideas will help. Any questions on that? I know I talk, and I should give you the opportunity to ask questions as we went, but if there's anything that you'd like to bring up, go ahead.
We're a construction company as well. What do your quarterly EAP drills look like? Do you want me to do that?
Sure. So, and we try to do one each quarter in each location. And when I talk about location, we have a lot of work in the Twin Cities. We have an office in the Twin Cities, and we have an office here in Fargo. So we try to do one in each location each quarter. And depending on what it is, we started out with our emergency action plan drills. We started out doing specific drills. Okay, we're going to pretend that there's a fire. Okay, or we're going to pretend that there's an injury, and we do a mock injury and stuff. And it worked okay. But so if you're going to have a mock drill where somebody is injured, for instance, so you have the horn blow and you have everybody stand down from what they're doing, and then you take care of the fake injured person that you have, and everybody else is standing around the job site doing nothing while you're pretending to take care of this person that's injured. And my experience in that is that it doesn't go well because everybody's not involved with it. And so we did that. We've done some, like I said, some fire drill ones. What I found has worked out the best is when we have an emergency action plan. The biggest thing and the most important thing when you have an emergency is if it's a evacuation or a stand down or whatever, is to get people to the muster point. And so when we have an emergency action drill, we'll get everybody out of the building or out of whatever they're doing, equipment parked and stand down and all that stuff, and it's with the horns. And actually, a little side story on that, what I would like to see, instead of the horns that we have out there, and I don't know if they're available, I would like to see those same bull horns, but with Wi-Fi on them, so you could actually get on there and talk to everybody around the site through these bullhorns. But I haven't seen that yet. But maybe something you could put out there, and then you wouldn't have to work anymore.
Can I take that?
Yeah. But anyhow, so what I do is we have the stand there. Everybody get to the muster point, and everybody comes out there, and then we'll do some programming. We'll say, thanks everybody for, evacuating the building and coming out here. Had this been an emergency, here's what we would have done. And then we talk about whether it was a weather emergency or whether it was a fire emergency or when we were building the apartment building right next to Plaza Azteca, remember there was a shooting out in the parking lot. And at the time, we were under construction there and we had guys that saw it happen out the window. And, the person jumped in the car and took off. And so we knew he was gone. But a construction site tight up against the parking lot of that, they could very easily have ran into our building and disappeared somewhere, right? So, active shooter event. So what we try to do is we try to talk about the different events that could have happened. Like I said, weather emergency, fire emergency, whether injury, whatever it was, collapse, and then we talk through all those scenarios. And everybody on the entire site is then involved with it and are participating in it and get to listen to that explanation. When we did it the other way, it was just the core group that was around that individual, or the core group that went through the fire drill, for instance, that go through to check the building, make sure nobody's in there. Well, everybody's outside standing and looking up at the building, and they weren't participating. So I changed the way we do our emergency action plan drills, and that's why I did that. I don't know that that's for everybody, but it did work for us when we did that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thanks for letting me come and speak for a little while here. Hopefully I don't even know what time it is, if I went over time or not.
1:05.
Oh, well, I do have a tendency to talk a little longer than I should, but I do believe that, the things that we've talked about here are impactful, and hopefully you got something out of it, so.
Oh, Ron, thank you very much.
Remember to answer the survey from the email that you get? Remember the dates we talked about for the December conference and the July golf outing? And let us know what you want to see for future programming. Thank you. Have a great day.